welcome you to the Tryst panel discussion. आज हम एक बहुत ही गंभीर सब्जेक्ट पे बात करने वाले हैं, एक ऐसा सब्जेक्ट जो पिछले कुछ हफ्तों से रोज़ की कॉन्वर्सेशन का एक अहम हिस्सा बन गया है. We are talking about India's urban infrastructure crisis. We have on one hand planned cities like Delhi and Gurugram, and as we have been witnessing for the last 1 week what is happening in Yamuna Bazaar, our Garhi village in Delhi. It is drowning in just few hours of rain, and there are massive infrastructure projects of developing flyovers and bridges, and as we have noticed what happened in Pune and Gujarat, they are collapsing just after few days of its inauguration. In this sense, बीजेपी बार बार कहती रहती है कि ये एक ट्रिपल इंजन की सरकार है जो डेवलपमेंट फास्ट ट्रैक करेगी, लेकिन हमारे सामने आज जो ग्राउंड रियलिटी है, the way the reality is unfolding before us, it creates a very different image of Vikas than what we would like to think. Also, we have technocratic and bureaucratic initiatives in the form of smart city missions, which was launched a decade ago with much fanfare. And it envisioned to create some 100 smart cities. आज वही स्मार्ट सिटी मिशन हमारे लिए रिमाइंडर बन गया है कि इतने प्रोमिसेस के बावजूद हमारे जो बेसिक फैसिलिटीज़ हैं जैसे सड़क, पानी, ड्रेनेज या फिर हाउसिंग, आज भी काफ़ी लोगों के लिए एक स्ट्रगल है. इट इज़ अ डिस्टेंट ड्रीम फॉर most of the people. So what we are witnessing today is a lack of participatory mechanism to make our cities more inclusive. तो आज का सवाल ये है कि अगर इन्वेस्टमेंट इतना ज़्यादा है, वादे इतने सारे हैं, तो फिर हमारा शहर, why is our cities failing again and again? Therefore, to discuss such plethora of concerns, I'm really glad to host the panelists for today. They are distinguished experts from the field of urban infrastructure and governance. We have Ms. Srujana Yadav, Senior Lead at Telangana State Finance Commission. We have Mr. Arvind Unni, prominent urban researcher who has an experience of over 12 years in participatory planning and an activist. And we have Mr. Tikender Singh Panwar, former Deputy Mayor of Shimla, who was also the member of National Task Force to review the 74th Constitutional Amendment, an author and an environmental activist. I welcome you to the panel discussions, sir and ma'am. So, we will start off with the questions. My first question is a very broader question which I wanted to ask all of you, very briefly to set the context of the conversation for the subsequent conversations. So my first question is that India is investing in its public infrastructure more than ever. In the Union Budget of 2025-2026, the capital expenditure was more than 11 lakh crore, which was almost 3% of the GDP. But here we are, हमारा ground reality कुछ और ही है. We are witnessing a monsoon that the current public infrastructure does not have the bandwidth to tackle. In this sense, जो urban flooding हम देख रहे हैं, it is translating into more like a man-made disaster. तो सवाल ये है कि what explains this gap of massive investment and the reality of the outcome that constrains the city being more durable and of a better quality? Srujana ma'am, if you would want to go ahead first.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay. Sure, thank you for inviting me to this panel. Absolutely enjoyed to share and with fellow friends and colleagues who are part of various distinguished committees and also the much needed work in urban infrastructure. I think I will very specifically talk from Telangana's perspective, and urban flooding has been a very significant issue in Telangana. Not just in Hyderabad, but also in cities like Warangal, Nizamabad, many other tier 2, tier 3 cities which have significant presence of urban local bodies. So Telangana has 140 plus 1 urban local bodies. When we mean plus 1, the GHMC as per the State Municipal Act doesn't come under the 74th Amendment Act, so we call it 140 plus 1. And they are facing significant urban flooding issue for 2 reasons. I want to also keep it very crisp and short so that there is more discussion on why it's happening than what are the causes. One is there is a massive encroachment of water bodies across Hyderabad or any other major cities. So if you see the way urbanization is happening in Telangana is not commensurate with the rapid urbanization trends or intermigration that's happening within the state. So that's one thing that I wanted to place for the record. Massive expansions of new cities, neopolis, the amenities and infrastructure are highly stressed. Very pertinent to urban flooding is most of these areas where we see massive infrastructure coming up are also encroached. So I will not mince the word to say that there is no encroachments. There are more than 1,000 bodies in water bodies in Hyderabad alone. 480 of them are fully encroached. These are major lakes. Not even when I say 9,000, 1,000 is lesser numbers. It has a lot of cities, it has a lot of lakes and other small water bodies. So there is high encroachment of these urban water bodies, one. And two, there is no surveillance on these water bodies and where it is leading to. It is leading to a huge impediment on the natural course of water and natural drainage in the city. So this is the major issue, and urban flooding is happening because of least amounts of planning that has gone into water management and water management and water resource management. So the last time that we had, because urban local bodies here have been almost pushed to irrelevance. The entire control is with the GHMC. Smaller municipalities don't have enough infrastructure in terms of functionaries. Smaller municipalities also don't have scientific methods to understand how to control urban flooding, because most of the urban flooding is happening through streams of lakes and ponds which are interconnected to each other. And it's always a jurisdiction issue, who's controlling where and who's monitoring what. So I put in the language of 73rd, 74th Amendment Acts and the Union Finance Commission, I can say there's a huge functional clarity that the urban local bodies in Telangana require. Is it under urban biodiversity thing? Are they going to look after the plantation, or is it under GHMC? Is it under the small municipality, or is it actually under the bigger lake protection committee? So there's a lot of functional clarity at the local body level that is needed, one. And two, the functionaries have to work in collaboration with each other. We don't have any digital interfaces or any dashboards or any IT-driven solutions to understand what floods where and how. We have things in place, but they are not synchronized. That's the second part. And third part is very massive real estate linked encroachments. And I think strong political will and strong institutional will together, bringing in huge amounts of public sentiment, can be way forward, especially in terms of urban flooding. Because this is not only just here, this is also in tier 2 cities across Telangana. Recently you see Nizamabad has been fully flooded. Kamareddy, it's in erstwhile Nizamabad district. It's been fully flooded. Some amount of food and relief packages were delivered by drones. Now people are celebrating with sending water and food by drones. So the entire paradigm shift from why urban flooding happens to when flood happens, what kind of technology we are using to give food and water. This actually shows institutional apathy to not address very basic things. This is my view, and yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. You have pointed out a very pertinent point about whose jurisdiction it is, and I will come to that later. And Tikendra sir, if you want to go ahead next.
Okay, so I think one basic point that you two set right is that total investment is a disbelief. So ये आप गलत फहमी निकाल दीजिए कि ये परसेंटेज ऑफ जीडीपी से जब कैलकुलेट करते तो पिछले 10-12 साल में नुकसान नहीं, और कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर से हम लोग ये तय नहीं कर सकते कि बहुत ज़्यादा डेवलपमेंटल एक्टिविटीज हो. So let's the context straight. क्योंकि कैपिटल इन्वेस्टमेंट का मतलब क्या है? कैपिटल इन्वेस्टमेंट का मतलब ये है जैसे आप 11 लाख करोड़, उसमें आपका अगर आप अर्बन डेवलपमेंट का बजट देखोगे सेंटर से, मुझे सबसे याद है उन्हीं ने अरविंद और मैंने एक आर्टिकल की जो लिखा और मुझे फिगर्स थोड़ा करेक्ट कर देना अगर गलत है तो करीब 1 लाख करोड़ के आसपास है जो आपका अर्बन डेवलपमेंट का बजट। उसमें 35-40% सिर्फ लार्ज कैपिटल डेंसिटी मतलब मेट्रो पर। वो कुछ नहीं होता है मेट्रो का मतलब सबसे बड़ा नुकसान है शहर की, और सबसे बड़ा फ्लडिंग के लिए अगर कोई जिम्मेदार है बड़े शहरों में वो भी है मेट्रो। तो पहले तो और आपको 2 रिपोर्ट्स को जरूर देखना चाहिए। एक है जो वर्ल्ड बैंक की रिपोर्ट है और दूसरी एक है वो पुरानी होगी जो पिछले वाले कि वो बोल रहे हैं कि अगर बेयर मिनिमम भी प्रोवाइड करना है, इफ यू टू प्रोवाइड द बेयर मिनिमम इन सिटीज somewhat 10,000 tons, census and statutory tons, then you require somewhere around 90 lakh crore, $1 trillion, 90 lakh crore rupees. Okay? So there's no money in fact. So let's come out of this paranoia that has been set by the current government that look, we are investing hugely. There's nothing. It's abysmal. That's the first that you should clear. Having said that, another layer that we must understand, and that's why Surjana pointed out very well, is about where is this investment? So, to understand where is this investment going, you want to understand the character of the cities, how the cities are being transformed. It's not just 2014, of course 2014 comes as the post-2014 period, comes as a tipping point, I mean, then there was no rolling back. But things started going, to a kind of same tangent somewhere in 2000, 2002, and then of course we had the GA. Definitely was better than this month. But where, how do you define cities? Where cities were considered to be engines of growth. And it meant that engines of growth means you ought to have massive investments in the cities, whether those investments are required or not. और वो cities का जो structure है जो सुरजना बार-बार बोल रही है, कि मैं तो उस कमेटी में था रिव्यू करने के लिए, कि cities की जो governance framework है जो राजीव गांधी के ज़माने से जो नेशनल कमीशन ऑन अर्बनाइजेशन आया था, जो ये विजन कर रहा था कि वो डेमोक्रेटिक डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन होती है, वो तो डस्टबिन में फेंक दिया था, बहुत थोड़े समय के बाद ही। उसके बाद से तो एक्चुअली फ्रेमवर्क ये आ गया कि cities का जो काम होगा वो होगा to attract investment. So competitive cities का कंपटीशन करो। कंपटीशन करने के लिए क्या होगा? बहुत सारे वो शहर हैं, ये शहरों ने आपने नाम दिया, जो शहर में बेसिक जो प्रोडक्शन प्रोसेस था, वो प्रोडक्शन प्रोसेस था जिसमें हम कहते हैं इंडस्ट्रियल लेड सिटीज थी। The transformation started taking place in 70s, 80s, where you visit any of those old cities or towns, जहाँ अरविंद दिल्ली में पहले रहता था, उसके बगल में तो मोदी मिल्स थी, so बड़ी बड़ी मिल्स थी। बॉम्बे में जाओ, बड़ी कॉटन मिल्स थी, तो वो प्रोडक्शन हाउसेस थे सिटीज के, उस आहिस्ता ट्रांसफॉर्म। अब वही प्रोडक्शन हाउसेस आप जा सकते थे हैबिटेट के लिए, डेमोक्रेटिक गवर्नेंस के लिए। You could have done really wonders to those spaces. I mean, you had those spaces. I mean, you can understand apartments or no more working. But instead of that, because we were attracted to the metropolitan capital across the globe, हम लोग वही बैंडविड्थ पे फॉलो करते हुए हमने कहा कि हम भी अट्रैक्टिव सिटीजन, हमारा काम होगा कैपिटल अट्रैक्ट करना, इन्वेस्टमेंट बोथ ग्लोबल एंड नेशनल। अभी ग्लोबल तो कितना आया वो तो वर्ल्ड बैंक की रिपोर्ट में 2% भी नहीं आया, ओके, जो इन्वेस्टमेंट के लिए। लेकिन हमने क्या किया, हमने अपना पूरा जो स्पेसिस थे रियल एस्टेट को, तो रियल एस्टेट लेड डेवलपमेंट इज द सेकंड चैप्टर, जिसने डेमोक्रेटिक गवर्नेंस का सत्यानाश किया। और इसके हिस्टोरिकली एक तो ये भी समझना है कि ऑफ कोर्स क्लाइमेट चेंज इज एन इंपॉर्टेंट रीजन फॉर स्प्रेडिंग, बिकॉज़ नाउ यू आर हैविंग precipitation which you've never heard of, in at least in our lifetimes. That's something that, of course, climate change is repeatedly pointing out. But then, if that is the reality, to have been living with disasters, or to start living with disasters, that what kind of land use change do you desire in cities? Then you require cities to be designed with nature, where you have water sequestration, where Sujna was pointing out, like, your water flow, ये बड़ा interesting है चंडीगढ़ का अलग चंडीगढ़ क्यों नहीं इतना फ्लड होता है इतना बाकी क्यों? Because it was designed so well कि अभी भी उसके मतलब drain out होने का still because it gets choked, but it's still far better. Instead of that, there's a massive land use change. What Sujna was pointing, biodiversity तो खैर गया ही गया, लेकिन massive land use change यहाँ पर if you see the land cover in urban India, I think Arvind will have the exact figure, but it's gone phenomenally high. बहुत ज़्यादा मतलब जो है वो concrete जहाँ runoff the river runoff जो हो रहा है पानी बहुत तेज हो रहा है, which and then last nail in the coffin is the smart cities. Smart cities have destroyed us. The kind of urban structure it has built, and the kind of no convergence or no interdependence that exists between different departments, the parastatals. Now the Delhi High Court had to intervene and tell the government that look, boss, there's a single human being living as an urban citizen in the city. The water from the metro flows to the metro is governed by the Delhi Metro corporation, which is like multi-governance tier. Then वो रोड पर आता है, रोड जो है कभी पीडब्ल्यूडी का है, कभी म्युनिसिपल कॉर्पोरेशन का है, ड्रेन घुसता है लेकिन घर उसी का ही है जो वहाँ पर है, तो ये क्या है, क्या तमाशा है? तो ऐसा ये नहीं हो सकता है सिस्टम। तो लास्ट एरिया में कॉफिन जो मैं बोलता हूँ बार-बार वो है स्मार्ट सिटीज, जिसने हिस्टोरिकली मतलब पटना जैसा शहर जो कभी नहीं बरसात में फ्लड होता था, थैंक्स टू आवर स्मार्ट सिटी प्रोजेक्ट्स वो पटना शहर में फ्लड because we have actually blocked the water controls. तो अगर ऐसा है इसमें फ्यूचर कैसे देखा जाना चाहिए? With that I would like is that design is so essential. The two basic elements that have to decide and design the future of our cities. One is geological mapping, another one is hydrological. ये तो no compromise चीज़। और साथ में फिर governance के लिए I think you have another question later on. Come later. What kind of disruptions are required in governance? And we just brought it up from the Kerala Commission because I'm going there days after. और वहाँ पर हम लोगों ने पूरा 25 साल का पूरा disruption governance में जो सूट है, नहीं तो ये कोई ownership नहीं. It's like single citizen with multiple owners and no one owning the town. That's something completely unsustainable.
Right, sir. No one is owning up to the consequences. Yes. Arvind sir, your insights on this.
देखिए Adija, thank you, pleasure being here. So adding to what Srijana and Devinder ji has mentioned, I look at this infrastructure crisis also from one more sort of perspective, and that perspective is that right now the way ULBs are not getting access to funds, they really don't have much room to really function on the ground, like Srijana was mentioning. In that sense, ULBs are tied up and the present governance structure actually does not give them enough powers to deal with more on the ground issues like urban flooding, right? तो इसमें क्या हो रहा है कि जो मुझे लगता है कि इसमें देखिए इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर क्राइसिस का जो कॉन्सेप्चुलाइजेशन है उसी में शायद प्रॉब्लम है। तो अभी यूएलबीज क्या कर रहे हैं कि ये इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को और बनाने में लगे हुए हैं, पर हमारे शहरों में क्या हो रहा है कि इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर जो अभी बन रहे हैं या जिस तरीके से बन रहे हैं या जिस किस्म के बन रहे हैं उसी के कारण अर्बन फ्लडिंग हो रहा है। तो अर्बन फ्लडिंग का सोल्यूशन अभी के रूप में जिस हालत अभी हम हैं वो शायद ये नहीं है कि हमें और नया इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर क्या बनाना है या और नए किस्म के वाटर चैनल्स बनाने हैं, शायद वो हो सकता है, पर अभी जिस टाइप के वाटर चैनल्स बनते हैं कॉम्प्यूटराइजेशन के साथ, जो कहते हैं ना कि अभी का जो हमारा the undue focus and attention that we have given to the model of infrastructure itself, I think that in itself is a big question that we have to very well think and thought through and then take it forward. Otherwise, what's happening is that everyone is looking for what is more lucrative, what is more bigger and grander, and I would be very happy to होता है. So we have metros in cities where metros are not required, and I don't know whether you know that लखनऊ में मैं गया था, या even नागपुर में भी, तो मेट्रो के कोचेस को संडेज में वो बर्थडे पार्टी बनाने के लिए रेंट आउट करते हैं. तो आप सोचें कि जिन शहर को सॉरी मेरा शायद इंटरनेट थोड़ा वीक है, तो मेट्रो कोचेस आप रेंट आउट कर रहे हैं बर्थडे पार्टी बनाने के लिए, और ये वही पैसा है जो शायद लोगों के काम में, बेसिक सुविधाओं में या बुनियादी सुविधाओं में प्रोवाइड होना चाहिए था, वो हम मेट्रो के ऊपर पैसा लगा रहे हैं. The other example, I think, so one was the whole idea of what infrastructure is and how we need to like really rethink that. Climate crisis has taught us now that look, the way we are building, the scale at that we are building cannot be the way forward, and this has to be point number one. Point number two was, Srijana gave a very good example, comparable to the metro. She gave an example of drone. So we have drone technology, but now we are using drone to deliver relief. We use technology for the wrong reasons and to show that we are working, right? I mean that's become. So I think I'll pick from what Parthu Mukhopadhyay has recently written. He said that कि हमारा governance जो है वो performative governance है, कि हमको दिखाना जरूरी है कि हम कुछ कर रहे हैं, और उसके लिए थोड़ा ड्रोन उड़ा दो और थोड़ा एंटी स्मोक गन चला दो. इससे ना लोगों का फायदा है, ना पोल्यूशन कम हो रहा है, ना मेट्रो बनाने से ट्रांसपोर्ट का इशू सॉल्व हो रहा है. तो हमारे गवर्नेंस में दिखावट ज़्यादा है, कंटेंट कम है, उसको हमें चेंज करने की ज़रूरत है. और उसका एकमात्र तरीका है जो जितेंद्र जी ने बहुत क्लियरली बोला कि पैसा हमको यूएलबीज तक पहुंचाना पड़ेगा. अभी जो दे रहे हैं वो कम है, जो कम है और उनसे उस कम पैसे का भी गलत जगह पे इन्वेस्टमेंट करा रहे हैं. पैसा रिसोर्स यू हैव टू टेक इट टू द यूएलबीज, एंड इफ एट ऑल वी आर एवर गोइंग टू डिसेंट्रलाइज, दिस हैज टू बी द टाइम, क्योंकि अर्बन फ्लडिंग जो हो रहा है वो स्टेट लेवल पे हैंडल नहीं हो सकता, वो नेशनल लेवल पे हैंडल नहीं हो सकता. स्मार्ट सिटीज में इतने सारे नेशनल लेवल प्रोग्राम्स में क्या बोलते हैं, रिवर साइड रिवर फ्रंट डेवलपमेंट बने. जम्मू में रिवर फ्रंट डेवलपमेंट का प्लान तो पूरा बह गया अभी जो फ्रंट में है, जो भी प्लान हुआ था. आई थिंक वी हैव टू गेट आवर हेड स्ट्रेट दैट climate change and the crisis that we face now cannot be dealt at a national level, cannot be dealt at a state level. It has to be the cities that lead the show. You have to bank on them and support them to really deal with this crisis. And infrastructure, making more or bigger is not going to solve. We have to think of newer ways of imagining what infrastructure is. Invest in people, invest in also communities. I think that would be like some way of taking this forward.
Thank you so much, sir. Actually, this point that you have mentioned about how centralized and opaque decisions are today, I wanted to ask this particular question to Srijana ma'am. Given if you share your insights from your experience with working with local bodies, it will be really wonderful. It is that जो बीजेपी का अभी एक क्लियर पैटर्न, एक क्लियर रिकॉर्ड सेट है, चाहे वो स्मार्ट सिटीज़ हो या फिर कोई और भी स्कीम्स हो. Always we have seen that the elected municipal bodies are, their autonomy and their role are diluted. The non-BJP ruled states, the funds are not being dispersed. So with this idea, how do you think these urban schemes bypassing local accountability, how can we move towards a more citizen-focused approach where actually the funds and the projects serve at the interests of the common people?
So the state that I'm representing, or maybe trying to generalize it, might not be a good idea, but here BJP has been in local bodies significantly previously when we had GHMC elections. GHMC is I would say one of them of the top 5 in terms of its budgetary outlooks. We have about 8,500 crores of outlay budget by the standing council in this year in January. So it's a decently bigger, one of the biggest municipalities, of course not as much as Mumbai, but in terms of its reach, in terms of population density and all of that. So here what I want to say when it comes to a particular political party is politically people are interested in local governance. There's no doubt. So So much so because it helps them penetrate deeper into the electorate. There is no doubt or question on irrelevance of local bodies on political front. Now, what is missing strongly is the link between political intent and institutional commitments. That is where it is the bus to deliver for the citizens. Because I know as a corporator or as a councillor that I will have to show something and I have to win. And most often, unlike the grand narrative of triple engine Sabka, states like Telangana, Kerala or Karnataka or Tamil Nadu, they vote based on individuals. So their reflection being in having a strong political presence in standing councils across municipal areas and municipalities have little relevance politically for the citizens. For the parties it has huge. But how do we translate this political presence into institutional commitment and how do we deliver to a citizen-centric service delivery model? This link has not been clear because I think somewhere down the line neither the civil society nor the citizen interest groups or nor different sorts of people have articulated these linkages working this way. Because citizens are at the end of the day, they are at the behest of political decentralization and economic centralization. So they are actually confused. Because if I were to put in a perspective, in a typical urban local body, as per the Act, 74th Amendment Act, there are 18 functional items, out of which 17 are devolved in time. Only 5 services is the only function that is not devolved, it's with the state government because it's under State Disaster Authority, State Disaster Management Authority, SND. All of the 17 are devolved. When you make devolved, you have a death certificate, birth certificate, marriage certificate, you want to have a sanitization drive, you want to clean your roads, you want to get a water connection or electricity connection. There's a mosquito larvae that has to be spraying of a pesticide or a larvicide around this lake cleaning. If there's a pothole. So most of the services that an average citizen, an urban citizen requires are met through urban model. But the citizens see this as a mere service delivery. They don't think it is an entitlement that is coming to you from a political right. You have to hold your immediate councillor or a ward member accountable so that they get it. Because for me as an urban citizen, I think voting a different political party in urban local bodies is different from what I'm getting. There is no link to me. There is no link that is happening between these two. Hence, this grand narrative might help a political party like BJP to set in the blame in Sabka. But if they don't have any institutional connect, if they don't have any citizens trying to understand or hold them accountable on these issues, it's a double whammy. And to make it little more experienced, to make it little more grounded in the experience in Telangana, DHMC almost has 60% of presence of BJP. But all of them beg for funds from the state government. So even if they want to do anything in their individual wards or circles, they have to ask for money because they have no imagination of how do you create own sources of revenue. But we constantly say OSR is important, how do you expenditure money? So for example, giving a metro to a birthday party might be a very bad idea in terms of revenue generation. But in terms of making your own source of revenue for a local body, it might be useful. But you don't have the ability to even think about that. Because I think one tectonic shift that present Union Finance Commission and the State Finance Commission are also looking at is there is a very strong line of thought which is established that the state will give you, center will give you, okay. But to make a resilient urban local body, to make a resilient rural local body, or in fact to deliver on the citizens, it's also very important how do you build resilience for the local body. And that can't happen only through them. Right? So the 17, 18 items that they have to deliver. They don't have money, they don't have funds, they don't have functionaries. They are not very clear on the functions, but how do you deliver? In this entire process, you don't address the issue at the local but the national level to say privileges are. That's a great model. Because these two are rich. So the crisis is at a multiple level, I would say. I think my answer will be very reductionist if I try to address it to the name. But political narrative is very different from what institutions want to deliver or design to deliver. To add to that, I also had another thought. When we constantly think of infrastructure, cities often, especially a city like Hyderabad, thinks cities development is equal to real estate development. Cities development is equal to the number of houses that you have. Cities development is for you to have number of automobile sales. So the very idea Here, how are social infrastructure for the cities? You have footpaths in your cities. You have street lighting in the cities because as we speak, 15,000 sanitation workers of GHMC clean
Ma'am,
the roads
just
today or day after are only involved in cleaning the this all of this.
ma'am, I'm sorry to interrupt. I think your voice is breaking a bit. Can you just repeat the point on sanitation so that we can continue from there? Hello, ma'am.
No, I'm saying as we speak, why this political narrative and institutional capacity part premium?
Yes, we can hear you. It's just breaking sometimes.
One. Yeah, is it any better now?
Yeah, I think it is better. Yeah. You continue, ma'am.
So the example about there is no link between political narrative and institutional delivery in terms of services for citizens is also happening at multiple levels. For example, we have 15,000 sanitation workers in Hyderabad. From past 12 days, their only job is to clean the roads and clean every Ganesh idol area because of a lot of litter and debris that it has. And we've almost 2.4 lakh idols in different water bodies across Hyderabad. Now imagine 15,000 people are only doing this job past 10 days. What about your waste management? What about your door-to-door collection of garbage? What about street lighting? What about your median maintenance? What about watering your plants across the city? So many of the services to local bodies have a often demand-driven approach. You demand, we give. Otherwise, we don't. So it is not fitting in a larger political narrative because political narratives at a larger or national level have no understanding of how local bodies function at the local level. So there's a huge disjunct between this political narrative because that is a completely a hollow narrative. That's something that I want to clearly establish that it has no meaning because you have a very precarious decentralization, very strong political narrative, almost non-existent institutional reach. So this triage is difficult. You know, as a theorist or as a practitioner, it might be easy for me to verbalize it also to think, but being a street vendor or being some other person, being a citizen of a city, it's difficult. What are you getting from home and why? You are often, rather than delivering, rather than bringing an entitlement or the rights-based understanding of a local democracy, which is at the core of 70th or 74th Amendment Acts, you're confusing the citizen and you're giving them the bare minimum, which is also coming from a lot of struggle. So political narrative is fully taking you to a different direction altogether. It is misdirecting you. It is putting you on the wrong footing. It is using you for their political propaganda. It is not delivering on the promises because they are not interested in anything other than their own electoral bid. Hence, this is a very complex political phenomena, political narrative, which has least impact on the local bodies. And today, whatever we do, for example, e-bills, local bodies will come. Arvind has just said that most of the things it has to be. You know, I am part of Hyderabad, I'm in a different part of the city, there is no rainfall, but there is no footpath, there is no footpath. My parents live in a different part of the city, there is no bus connectivity, there is a lot of pollution in bus space. My friend is in a different part of the city, she has no autos because the transport services are different. Until and unless you have locally strong institutions which are in sync with your political narrative and institutional ethos, how can you establish? It is not a one step after the other step, it is not a linear direction. It is all interwoven. It is maneuvered into a certain way to understand the different aspects of how complex cities are. Cities are also complex, but the complexity is being pushed to conclusion for your political gain. So that at the end of the day, even if it is flooding, it's fine. But I want water during a flood. It's fine during the heat where I don't have water, but I just need 2 hour break during the heat. So you're reducing the rights-based framework to bare minimum. And reducing this entire rights-based agenda of local governance and democratic decentralization, making it a joke. At the behest of people, and you're constantly saying it's a triple engine Sarkar. I am wondering even if at least one engine works on it.
Thank you, ma'am. That makes a total sense. The incoherence of institutional commitment and the facade of this narrative. Thank you, ma'am. My actually next question is for Tikendra sir. It is regarding the smart city missions, and I would like to have more insights on it. It is one of India's most ambitious project. Some more than 1 lakh crore was sanctioned for this 100 selected cities. उन्होंने बोला कि using technology and innovation it will transform urban life, and for this particular project they have introduced what is known as the special purpose vehicle. Private investment को भी encourage किया गया और काफ़ी discussion हुई कि it will make our cities future ready. But here we are a decade later in 2025. एक सवाल उठा है कि has this model of overly relying on private investment and SPVs actually has made our cities any smarter or better, or has it come, this particular smart city mission has actually weakened public accountability and local governance?
Well, I ask this question to you. You are the youngest of all of us. Do you really think that the cities have become smarter or they worse?
I don't think
Any child, or a teenager living in urban India would give an informative no. So, but before that, I think अनुजा एक बात और है जो आप सृजना से बात कर रहे थे कि जो total investments हैं, बजट आउटलेज हैं, वो मैं पहले कैपिटल इन्वेस्टमेंट की बात कही, लेकिन एक हिंदुस्तान में प्रोसेस होता है रिवोल्यूशन का. पैसा कैसे आता है? पैसा आता है एक तो कौन सोच रेवेन्यू होता है जिसको हम बोलते हैं अपना बजट बनाया, प्रॉपर्टी टैक्स से लिया. अभी जीएसटी के बाद सारा कुछ वन नेशन वन टैक्स हो. Everything that the city used to get now goes to the center. और then center एक divisible pool बनाता है, और divisible pool जो हमारे 5 साल बाद फाइनेंस कमीशन हैं वो तय करते हैं कि इतना पैसा जाना चाहिए. उसका एक फॉर्मूला है जिस हिसाब से जाता है. और ये जो बहुत आज को नीगे मार रहे हैं, I don't know whether you understand this word in Hindi, but all those who are boasting of this massive flow of money that's going to the cities is nothing but sheer trash. क्योंकि if you see the total devolution that has taken place over a period of a couple of years, especially after the 13th Finance Commission, when this very good constitution was rolled out, you will see that we are just 0.5% of the GDP. Take countries like Philippines, it's 3%. I'm not even talking about China, forget China. Okay, I'm not even talking about the developed nations. Brazil, 5.1% of the GDP. South Africa, again somewhere around between 4 and 5%. So devolution हो ही नहीं रही. तो पहला तो ये बात बहुत क्लैरिटी समझना चाहिए जो अरविंद बोलना चाह रहा था कि पैसा नहीं मिल रहा है, पैसा कहाँ है? पैसा बहुत ही सेंट्रलाइज्ड है, और वो जब तक आप डिवॉल्व नहीं करेंगे, आप कहीं मक्खी मारने के लिए, कहीं मच्छर मारने के लिए काम करते रहेंगे शहर में, जैसा सूचना की हुई थी यही काम बच गया है या कूड़ा उठाने के लिए. You don't have much work. Because the key essential feature is what? Is planning. Who plans the city? Who governs the city? So governance part, that too on a very flimsy, trivial account, you find that there are local governments, and Kerala we call them. Elsewhere in the country, it's all local bodies. They are mandated with the same context that I tried to set earlier. So, I don't have words to explain, but बचकाना पाना, it's an infantile disorder. कुछ नहीं है नीचे. मैं 5 साल शेयर करेक्ट में रहा हूँ. 6 महीने पता लग गया कि शेयर चलाने वाले कोई और ही था. उसकी फोर्सेस और. तो ये क्लैरिटी होना चाहिए. अब इस पर हम लोगों ने जैसे पहले हमने कहा कि cities engines of growth, हमने real estate led development बिल किया, और तो समझ बता ही रही थी कि कैसा, how it really destroyed not just ecology but they were overriding all features of urban life. अब आ गया smart city. Smart city क्यों आता? Because there is this transition taking place from financial capital to what we call this the 4th stage of revolution called the digital revolution. Now the maximization of profit that's going to take place across the globe it is through this digital transformation as well. And there have been studies and studies. So for us, what is important is how do we democratize this process to engage. And there are very interesting features of Kerala Commission where we implemented disruption, where we implemented blockchains, but to be governed by a local government. A digital officer under the city government. Nobody even thinking of that's what's going to happen 25 years down the line. तो 25 साल ये था कि आप पूरा डिजिटल डेटा आएगा, डैशबोर्ड होगा, फ्लैश होगा, सब कुछ होगा. अरे फ्लैश तो तब होगा जब आपका गुड़गांव में गाड़ी चलेगी. गाड़ी तो बसी हुई है. 10 घंटे के लिए गाड़ी बसी हुई है. क्या करोगे डिजिटल क्लॉक से? कोई डिजिटल क्लॉक होता है. तो उसमें basically उसका inherently flawed. That was completely flawed. The design of the smart city was precisely meant कि ठीक है आप ये थोड़ा सा छोटा एरिया पकड़ेंगे और छोटे एरिया पकड़ के जिसको हम एरिया बेस्ड डेवलपमेंट बोलते हैं. एरिया बेस्ड डेवलपमेंट was then compartmentalized into 3 aspects: retrofitting, redevelopment, and greenfield. कोई नहीं आया greenfield प्रोजेक्ट, शायद एक शहर है प्रोजेक्ट. बाकी सब retrofitting और redevelopment. देखो retrofitting और redevelopment हमने देखा बिहार में क्या किया, पटना में वो शहर भी डुबा दिए. तो तुरंत पेंट अप कॉन्ट्रैक्टर्स का नेक्सस, बिग कंसल्टेंट्स का दिल्ली में बैठकर, मैं आपको 10 बता सकता हूँ, इट्स नॉट प्रूडेंट टू नेम देम, 10 बड़े कंसल्टेंट जो दिल्ली में बैठकर और साथ में पीछे पीएमयू चला रहे थे. बट देयर वाज व्हाट सुजना वाज मेंशनिंग, सेंट्रलाइजेशन ऑफ फाइनेंस, लेकिन गवर्नेंस को थोड़ा डेमोक्रेटिक है. आप इसको कैसे काउंटर करना है? इन्होंने कहा इसको ही बाहर करो, गवर्नेंस के ही फ्रेमवर्क को बाहर करो. और इसलिए बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंगली कॉन्सेप्ट आया एसपी, स्पेशल पर्पस व्हीकल, और इट विल बी रजिस्टर्ड विद द कंपनीज एक्ट. मेरा गुरु था जो मतलब 74 कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन अमेंडमेंट्स लिखी है, केसी शिवरामकृष्ण. So he and I, we reviewed, and of course with a few bunch of other people, we reviewed the 74th Constitutional Amendment, I think in 2013, when I was elected as the Deputy Commissioner. So, you know, and that was also the phasing in and phasing out of one era and phasing in of another era. And then when 2015, the smart cities were rolled out, I still remember his, proverbial wisdom. And he used to say, "Tikendra, do you know what are smart cities?" I said, "Sir, you tell me." He was my guru. He said, "Smart cities are like writing an obituary of the 74th Constitution." So smart cities wrote the obituary of 74th Constitution Amendment. And in 2025, he wrote the obituary of the smart cities because they know what is going on. So, बर्बाद हो गए. मुझे गिनती के 10 नहीं मैं गिना सकता हूँ पूरे देश में जो स्मार्ट सिटीज के तहत आपने चाहे ट्रस्ट के बिल्डिंग किया होगा या आपने इंटरनेट की, तो ये पूरा और ये जो एडमिशन करना कि हाँ हम ये पब्लिक मनी लगाएंगे और ये प्राइवेट कैपिटल लगाएंगे. प्राइवेट कैपिटल मूर्ख थोड़ा है जो हमारे इस देश में आएगा, इसमें ही पता रिटर्न आएगी कि नहीं आएगी. They don't tend to come here because there is not that atmosphere. And then if they come, they want to have the return. It's not possible to get the return. So it's a real messy situation in urban India. So therefore, हमारा argument होना चाहिए more public investment, more public infrastructure, or more public investment, public infrastructure. Not that has to be on Kerala government risk-informed developmental process. क्या बना रहे हो और वो बह रहा है, क्या मतलब है उसका? तो इसलिए प्लानिंग को पूरा का पूरा उसके पांव पे खड़ा करना है, सिर पे लेंगे. और पांव पे खड़े करने का मतलब ये है कि वो नीचे से ऊपर तक प्लानिंग. दो ही ऑप्शन है आज, या तो ये है कि आप सब कुछ उठाकर दे दो, जैसा कि हमारे अपने बैंगलोर के हालत प्रोग्राम छोड़ो पर है क्या सिटी सीधा चीफ मिनिस्टर हुई बना. तो चीफ मिनिस्टर ही अब एक तरह से वहाँ मेट्रोपॉलिटन मेयर होगा. अभी देखिए वो भी आज में से आई मीन यू कैन स्क्रिप्ट इट राइट नाउ, इट विल बी बिग फेलियर बिकॉज़ chief minister cannot manage the city. Where is the people? You have to bring in that whole question of people's electeds. Okay? तो आप देख लेना 5 साल में बैंगलोर में क्या है. तो एक तो मॉडल वो है कि आप उनको दे दो, है ना, कि भी तो. और वो चार्टर ऑफ सिटीज का तो है ही एक बंदा पुराना जिसको एक बार नोबेल प्राइज मिला, अपना जो इंडियन इकोनॉमिस्ट था उससे 1 साल पहले. उसने बोला तुम्हारे पास की बात नहीं, जस्ट चार्ट इट आउट विद कंसेप्ट्स. एक तो ऑप्शन ये. दूसरी ऑप्शन ये है कि you start actually building institutions, start building in those processes which actually withdraw from the 74th Constitutional Amendment. But 74th Constitutional Amendment itself is now quite insufficient to address the modern challenges because migration was not an issue at that time.
Hmm.
When I was there in Kerala for the Kerala Commission, there's a major flow of migrants. You have 30 lakh people in a state like Kerala. And मेरा वो दोस्त बताता है जो कि इसमें बहुत expert है on migration in India, you know, the India movie. He says that the third greatest migration that is taking place in India. The first one was from to the east, the second one was to the west, and the third one is to the south. So Surina, you be aware, including Arvind, a massive flow of people are going to come to the south. So, and if you do not imagine 30 lakh people staying there, it's bogus. क्या share now? So how do you incorporate into that? Not as benefactor beneficiary, but as co-producers of these city spaces, as co-producers of this entire architecture of urbanism that I call. उसमें हम लोगों ने एक बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग दिया है जो कहीं आपको इनफैक्ट साउथ एशियन में मिलेगा. We recommended of course the city council, but a workers council within the city council, comprising migrant workers, different sections. तो कुछ सुनता है सब बोलते हैं सिटीजन काउंसिल है ना. सिटी काउंसिल सिटीजन काउंसिल कौन है? एलीट ग्रुप है, कुछ बुजुर्गों का ग्रुप है, सब कुछ कैप्चर करके बैठे रहते, कुछ नहीं है और खास इंटरेस्टेड पार्टी या पॉलिटिकल पार्टी के छोड़. तो ये अनसस्टेनेबल है. इसलिए you have to just start arguing, start building those blocks, raising those issues. That a more sustainable way, that too in the overarching framework of climate change, has to be where we build this process from, of course, from top, bottom, you require geospatial and all, but also from below, नीचे से ऊपर तक करना, bringing those collectives तो थोड़ा सा sustainability की तरफ हम जा सकते हैं. वैसे sustainability की कोई गुंजाइश दिख नहीं रही है आज के सिस्टम में, honestly, because it's inherently a flawed system. Look at the economic collapse that मतलब, can you believe I just, I'll leave it to you then, because I have to go. Last for the Gurgaon, which is flooded, just gets the price of a flat, 100 CR, और पूरा फ्लड है. पर 100 CR में भी वो बोलता है कि इतने ज़्यादा लोग हैं अप्लाई करके कि वो इंटरव्यू लेगा कि आप मेरे वहाँ रहने लायक भी हो कि नहीं. एक तरफ मतलब 40% लोग आबादी जो है शहरों की वो स्लम्स में रहने करती है रहने के बाद, एक तरफ 100 करोड़ के लिए इतनी होड़े लगेगी. So what real estate builder बोल रहे हैं यार मैं तय करूँगा तुम are you even competent to stay in a and get cash flow. So you understand? It's a huge economic mess that is there. So there's no question that there will be sustainability, but at least sustainability in those referential forms, if I have to say. So this is a really messy situation. It's messing up. And with those words I want to conclude. Lastly also, Rija, that Arvind has also contributed a book which we are bringing out. So we will be looking forward later in his book on urban issues. That it's a brilliant work that is I think by the year and we would like to share more of that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would really look forward to reading that book. But yeah, since you have mentioned about the Workers' Council, how it is so exclusive our cities. So from there, I wanted to draw and ask this question to Arvind sir, that infrastructure of cities have affect different sections of people differently. Like for example, in this monsoon session, the government to a Lok Sabha question, they replied that under PM Awas Yojana Urban, they have completed at least more than 100 lakh houses, and of which 93 lakh has been occupied or have been completed. Even if these numbers are to be believed, still there is like a quarter left incomplete. And today we have seen that bulldozer justice, demolitions, they have become the new normal. Here we are seeing that like demolishing informal settlements as a quick fix solution, what we have seen in the Madrasi camp or the Indira camp. And here we have BJP slogans back from 2020 that Jahan Jhuggi Wahi Makan, and this has quietly disappeared post that. Also, there's another layer to it, is that in Delhi per se, the elite people have also encroached land and they are left untouched. But on the other hand, we have the minorities, the marginalized, the Muslims, the Dalits, who have been pushed to the periphery. So in this sense, my question is that how does the government want to justify these demolitions when its own schemes like Awas Yojana, urban homes are unoccupied and even unfinished.
Andrija, very quick response. Look, with respect to the PM Awas Yojana, they may have constructed 100 lakh units, 1 crore units, and there would be like another 1 crore kind of that is required. That's what is claimed. So look, I am again very skeptical of this whole deficit narrative, right? Of course, people are in need of affordable housing. Of course, people require houses. But what's happening under this guise of we will give you housing, कि हम घर बना के देंगे. अरे अभी क्या कर रहे हैं कि जो घर बने हुए हैं, जो लोगों ने थोड़े बहुत बनाए हैं अपनी तरफ से, अच्छा बुरा उस पर डिबेट कर सकते हैं. बस्ती हुई, colonies हुई, so on and so forth, which is where most of our people live, right? So it is that auto-constructed housing that people have made for themselves in the absence of state housing. That is being demolished under the guise of providing housing under PMAY, which is very, very problematic. One, that you are not even recognizing that, look, people have made what they have. They require services, they require basic amenities, and if they are that those things are provided, those housing, such housing can be improved, and we have a better and an easier way of providing housing for all. So the housing for all promise was for 2022. I don't know what is the new promise, maybe 29. But take my word again, since Vikender ji has given their word and Srijana also, my word is also that, look, it could be 2032, it could be 39, it could be 47. If our narrative is to actually make new housing for people and provide, that will not work for the poorest, because the poorest are already living. What we need to do is to recognize, formalize, and take them into the formal fold of city planning and improve. Some states have done it better, like Odisha has a better model, and some states have attempted to do that. I think PMAY should really learn from them and change and do that, because this whole constructing our way out of housing deficit, I don't think that's ever going to happen, at least in the economic stage of our sort of development. So that was point number one. Point number two was that, look, what we also, and I also want to come back to the smart city thing. So we have, through the smart cities, we have addressed 100 cities, right? And within those 100, there will be very, very few examples who have carried out small, examples that you can show that, these are good examples of area-based development, which is a small conclave within the city. But how many cities are there in India right now? So the last census was around 7,900, 8,000 cities. Right now, anyone's guess, we don't have a census yet, so we can't say. Anyone's guess is 15,000 or plus. And if we really reclassify our urbanization rate as compared to other states or other countries rather, we would already be 50%, 60% urban. So what's happening is that these 100 cities are not really going to change the 10,000 cities or 20,000 cities that we have. That's not going to happen. It will have a political ring to it, and it had maybe a political sort of ring to it in 2015. But in 2025, it's absolutely visible that 100 cities, even if you are providing already some like 500 crores or 100 crores, so on and so forth, it's not going to change much. And I also then go back to what Mahatma Gandhi said in the 1930s, 100 years ago almost, that India lives in its villages, right? That's what he said. But right now, India lives in its small cities. So unless our urban policy gets out of these Gurgaons, gets out of the Delhis and the Bombays and even the Hyderabad, really thinks of what needs to be done in our smaller cities. 2047, 57, I mean, we might come with these dates, but it's really not going to change what's happening on the ground, and that has to be done. My last submission is that, look, going back to the first one, is that, look, bigger, grander is not going to solve this. दिल्ली में कहावत है, बोलते दिल्ली या नॉर्थ में या हिंदी बेल्ट में सस्ता सुंदर टिकाऊ बोलते हैं, ठीक है? तो हमारे शहरों में देखो पैसा कम है, सस्ता सुंदर टिकाऊ आपको काम करना पड़ेगा, लोगों के साथ करना पड़ेगा, कम्युनिटीज के साथ करना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि सस्ता सुंदर टिकाऊ को वो बेस्ट यूटिलाइज करेंगे। अभी क्या हो रहा है, कॉन्ट्रैक्टर, कंसल्टेंट्स, एजेंसीज के पास जा रहा है और वो इस थोड़े से राशि जो हमको मिल रही है उसका भी इस्तेमाल बहुत गंदे तरीके से कर रहे हैं। तो आई थिंक एक फंडामेंटल शिफ्ट की जरूरत है ऑफ हाउ वी वांट आवर अर्बन टू बी, हाउ डू वी इमेजिन आवर अर्बन टू बी, डू वी वांट बिग फ्लाईओवर्स, 40-story buildings, or do we want good, safe footpaths which are shaded, which have street lights? I'm not saying that we don't want metros or we don't want public infrastructure. We do, but what is the priority? Where should we invest the first money that we get? Should it be for people's benefit or should it be for a few car owners, so on and so forth? And last point too, because you brought in housing, and I was in Delhi when these demolitions were happening. So there was one point that we always mentioned, that look, Delhi slums house around 20 to 30% of Delhi's population. Yeah? And those slums are located only on 0.5% of the land. 0.5% of the land is housing 20 to 30% of our population. And that is same for Bombay. I mean, the figures would change here and there, but essentially we are very unequal cities. And the mode of development that we are creating right now, this smart city and everything else, including PMAY to a certain extent, is even taking these small land parcels that our sort of not our poorer sections of the community or our marginalized sections of the community are in. So that also needs to be addressed, which is why our case cannot be compared to these Singapore's, London's, and so on and so forth. After whom we go and make these fancy plans. We need a fundamental shift in how we see urbanization. We need a fundamental shift in how we look at the politics of the urban. Because this 100 smart cities and all is not going to work. It's going to be the long term and the long run we have to change things. So बहुत बड़ा काम है, वो 100 शहरों की और स्मार्ट सिटी प्रोजेक्ट से नहीं होने वाला है। इसको थोड़ा लॉन्ग टर्म में हमको सोचना पड़ेगा और काम करना पड़ेगा। पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज का बहुत बड़ा रोल है, उनको सोचने की जरूरत है कि वो क्या एजेंडा सेट करते हैं। आई थिंक ये मेरे
Thank you so much, sir. You have highlighted a lot of important things that can make the cities more inclusive and participatory. Now I have reached this is just one last closing question. Very briefly, I just wanted to your closing lines, whatever way forward you think is the right at given the situation today. So we have seen how BJP has prioritized optics and spectacle over sustainability over development. My question is simple, that what according to you should be our alternative governance or planning approaches that could make our cities again more inclusive, more citizen focused? Just in a line or two, if you could just give us a glimpse of a way forward. Ma'am, if you would like to go ahead.
Yes, Bill, paucity of time, I'll say one is we have to actively, aggressively, consistently break this narrative of optics. We have to do it actively, very actively, through whatever. I live in Hyderabad. People who come here, they say this looks like Manhattan. Then I say, you either haven't seen Manhattan or you're lying to me. So there's no way Hyderabad is Manhattan. So we have to break them and we have to be very aggressive. You can't play a political narrative on your back foot. You have to play it on the front foot. Break it aggressively, break it every day, puncture it everywhere possible and tell that this is not going to work and this is a fake bubble which should be bursted. One. And two, an alternative vision to this will exist when you keep people at the center. I cannot come and sit on a table in a room planning of Mayur Virar extension for, as a person from Telangana, a person from suburban areas. I might be a bureaucrat, I might be an expert, because local knowledge, local wisdom, local understanding of ecology, environment, livelihood, city's character, city's core is with its people. We often ignore its people. That is at the core, one. And in the core, you bring in expert. But you don't bring in experts who will be a consultant for you. You bring in an expert who has a public angle to your work. I think that is what we're missing here, that you know, a BCG or a KPMG or a Deloitte or some XY company cannot do it. This is a business, this is a money-making model for them. When you want to bring in such sort of alternative vision, people have to be at its core. Stakeholders of my city, stakeholders of the city have to be at its core. Women have to be at its core. Women who travel in metro, we have to, is it gender inclusive? Are your street lights on? If you're planning a city which has significant minority population, you bring in the women, you bring in the men, you bring in elderly. You do any gender, you do any inclusive world of any urban metros in any city. It's absolutely not accessible for different levels of Landslides station in any of the metro station. Hello?
Yes, ma'am, your voice broke at the end. Just if you could repeat the point.
So, no, I was saying you would not see a single feeding station, single feeding room in any of the metro stations across all the mega cities in India. Because women were not part in that room. Pregnant women, lactating women, old elderly women or elderly transgender or people who are differently able were never part of it. I think we have to go old way. The old way is to bring in all stakeholders. It will take time, it is okay. We will wait. See, the problem is also with such planning is there is an urgency that is created to do your better because your narrative is built on that. Because everybody wants to be a poster girl or a poster boy or believe this Manhattan narrative, some Detroit narrative. How can you have a Manhattan here? You can drink water, what river flows there, what river flows, you can't see the Tango and Hyderabad, it's still, you can't even walk there. What are you talking about? Rivers that Sabarmati doesn't even have a regular flow, it's not a perennial river. You can't have river from Godavari or Krishna here, you can have something for some other city. So this entire exercise of bringing external examples, external stakeholders will be a failed experiment. Bringing its own people, bringing local people, of course we need experts, we need people who are diverse. But those people should have a public interface with business groups, contractors, real estate developers. People who want to make money out of city cannot be your stakeholder. That is my alternative vision to be in a city. Your people, your politicians, your researchers, your immediate people who live in, because the service delivery model approach is not for people who give you, but people who take your service. You cannot miss your important constituents. So I think I only want to leave with the second part is your imagination of an inclusive alternative model of building the city should have its people, should have important stakeholders, and it should be a consultative process, and it should be very localized. It's diverse, it's fluid. So much so it sounds ridiculous, but there are many cities who are doing it. Kerala is a brilliant example. We have studied, I think every local body approach of practitioner goes to Kerala and studies them. Today as we speak, their impact mortality rate is less than 5, which is much lower than USA. They did it because theirs is not a journey that happened for a vote, theirs is a journey that happened for 30 years. Their tourism, they have a sustainable tourism council who's going to pick your litter. I was in Trivandrum 3 days ago going to Kanapuru Palace, there is no litter. You see Hyderabad and Ganesh Mandal, there is litter. Because you are building things on sustainability, ownership, belongingness, and moral senses. So the fake narrative has to be broken, your narrative has to be people-centric, not business-centric.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was a really powerful way forward and a message that you have given. Arvind sir, if you want to go ahead with your closing lines.
Okay, my closing point is very similar to Srijana's, but I'll probably frame it in 3 ways. I think कि लोग अब क्योंकि जलवायु परिवर्तन इतना बड़ा मसला है, तो लोग ecological सोच, I think people and ecology at the center of whatever we do about our cities has to be in the core. Second, अगर हमारे शहरों को बेटर होना है या रहने लायक होना है, तो लोगों के साथ भागीदारी, पार्टिसिपेशन is again a fundamental thing जिसको हम नहीं छोड़ सकते हैं, और डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन साथ में होना चाहिए. सेंटर और स्टेट से शहर नहीं चल सकते हैं, सेंटर और पीएम ऑफिस से शहर नहीं चल सकते हैं. पिछले 10 साल हमको ये सवाल समझा रहे हैं. आखिरी पॉइंट ये कि शहर कैसा होना चाहिए, स्मार्ट सिटी वाला नहीं होना चाहिए, वो हमको दिख गया पिछले 10 साल में, लेकिन वाकई में क्या होना चाहिए. एंड फॉर दैट इमेजिनेशन दैट सृजना मेंशन्ड, folks have to come together and then think of an Indian, not even Indian, I mean, and we are very different people, we are very different contexts. We need to have our own imagination of how we want our urban to be, but we don't want them to be like, let's say, what Smartly has given us, but we want it to be more equal, inclusive. These 3 points, I think, are critical.
Thank you so much, sir. Tikendra sir, what are your closing lines for the same?
There's one more thing that I want to discuss or explain, is that unlike urbanization of the West, India's urbanization is a rural urban country. ये बिना समझे नहीं समझ सकते. वेस्ट की urbanization थी जहाँ पर it was led by industrialization, and the people were completely cut off from the villages, from suburbs, and the large numbers of peasants who were uprooted were absorbed in this industrial process, and not just their labor but even our workforce. There's some 50 million people who were actually exported from China, India, or large metro. हमारे urbanization थोड़ी different है. Pre-colonial हम colony थे, तब colonial towns बने, और अब जो है हम पहले industrial towns का हमने कोशिश किया, लेकिन अब हमें पता नहीं हम कैसे cities बनाएं, honestly speaking. So, and we cannot and we should not copy the model कि हम सोचें अब now we'll have industries in the city, and then it's a completely different story. So if that is the reality, then if that is the production process of urbanization, then what are the super layers, what we call the base and the superstructure? What kind of superstructure are we looking at? I think that superstructure is to be very dynamic, because the cities in India are extremely dynamic. Arvind is here. Ask him, where did he get married? Not in Delhi. He went back to his village. Okay, Kochi. I could join because that was COVID period. Likewise, I would say all, but maybe 75-80% of the people still actually are part of that rural urban. Kerala is a classic case, of course, others also. So that dynamism of India's urbanization needs to be kept in mind, captured, and the people's answer to the planning institutions. Why did the master plans fail in Delhi? Because Delhi planned for say 10 people, but they were 100 people. They come and they go. That is also real. So that whole, so it's a very complex, gigantic animal city here, India's urbanization, where we say more than 50% soon. The largest number of Homo sapiens living on Earth, the urban Homo sapiens will be, no doubt about it. But how do we capture? How do we capture, and of course, bringing in the contours of climate, participatory governance. But participatory governance doesn't mean that, we are asking people. It means how do we create processes where they become co-producers. I mean, it sounds very utopian, but I think that is the only way forward. And we have to bring layers. There are examples. It's not that they are not examples. There are examples where people have created those microcosms, stuff. And of course, at the meta level, also, I was explaining, Kerala is like experimenting. Not to say that that would be the ideal situation, because there are also, massive alienation of the youth. We've captured that in our commission. Alienation of the workers, because who is it that is capturing the Kerala urban governance process? Definitely democratic, but I would say it's not absolutely democratic. So what are the disruptions required? So I think it's a long way to go, but the way to go is through these processes to be unleashed. And what does it mean is that it has to be a two-way track, and it has to be take for example, when Sher Shah Suri was, constructing the 4 GT roads, the Grand Trunk roads, we all know that. That time you couldn't have the metros, okay? So what we require now, we cannot say, so it has to be quite need-based, not something that has to come 50 years henceforth. So I think that's how I just.
Thank you so much, sir. You have made a really great point about the dynamism of the urban spaces. So, with this note, we have come to the end of our panel discussion. It was such a wonderful discussion. For me personally, I have gained a lot of insights. So, today's discussion shows us one clear thing, that India's urban future cannot be built on just vague slogans and centralized control. We need to strengthen the local democracy and make the citizens centered to planning, or else our urban infrastructure is going to remain fragile and our city is going to be unjust. On that note, we end the panel discussion. Sir and ma'am, I thank you so much for joining, for sparing some valuable time from your schedule and joining us here. I thank you so much.